Alright gentlemen, let's do a little recap of what we have covered in the previous lesson by going through the structure of bacteria and virus. So just like what we have learned, bacteria and virus are two very different cells as compared to plant and animal cells, despite having some similarities between them. So let's relook at the bacterial cell right now. Bacteria is actually a single cell organism. So each bacteria is represented just by one single cell. Let's take a look at the different structure and function of a bacterial cell. Alright, let's take a look at the DNA structures first. In bacteria, there are two kinds of DNA. One, the single circular DNA, and second, plasmids. They are just two different forms of the genetic material. And take note, as compared to animal and plant cells, the genetic materials are not found in a membrane-bound nucleus. So there is no nucleus in the bacteria that keeps all the genetic material together. Similar to a plant cell, bacteria also has a cell wall that gives it its shape and keeps all the organelles within it. It also has a cell membrane to regulate the movement of substances in and out of the cells, just like how it works in a plant and animal cell. Some bacteria do have flagellum to help in its movement. Last but not least, it also has ribosomes to make proteins, for example, enzymes, to carry out chemical reactions, in this bacteria to keep it alive and to help it to grow. So this is the bacterial cell for you. You are expected to be able to compare the different cells, bacteria, plant, and animal cells to identify the similarities or differences. On the other hand, virus is much simpler. Most virus looks like the one on the right. It only has a protein coat that acts as the outer layer to keep the genetic material within the virus. The genetic material in virus comes in two forms, DNA and RNA. Some virus do have an additional envelope that wraps around the protein coat, and you can also find some envelope protein. So these are little spikes that are attached to the envelope of the virus. There's another name for the protein, and they are known as antigens. So these proteins are known as antigens, and we'll find out later on the importance of it. You can see, as compared to a bacteria, virus has no ribosomes, no cell membrane, no cell wall, and these are commonly found in bacterial cell. So actually, virus is non-living. It's unable to make more copies on its own. So how does it survive? It will have to leech on hosts. For example, plant, animals, and even human, to make copies on its own to multiply in numbers. This is why we are prone to viral infection, as the virus in our body is making multiple copies of itself. I'll pause here and take a look at your notes right now. There's a table in the chapter notes, and I want you to take some time to pause the video and fill in the blanks on your own to compare the different structures of bacteria and virus. This is very important, and this is a way that you could do your notes. Not just bacteria and virus, you can also compare with plant and animal cell in a separate table. I'll cover that when I am giving instructions on the summary notes that I would like each and every one of you to do after every single chapter. Press play when you are ready to look at the answers. So the outer covering that is found in bacteria is cell wall, but protein coat is the outer covering of the virus. In terms of the genetic material, it is found in the form of DNA in the bacteria, but in the virus you can find two different forms, DNA and RNA. Bacteria has cell membrane, but this is not present in the virus. Bacteria has cytoplasm, but this is not present in the virus. Last but not least, ribosome is found in bacteria, but this is also not found in the virus. We've come to the end of a quick recap of bacteria and virus, and in my first video, we would like to take a look at how vaccine works. So, the definition of vaccine means it contains a pathogen that prevents infection diseases by stimulating white blood cells to quickly produce antibodies when the pathogen invades. It's a very mouthful, so let's break it down. So, first, it contains an agent that resembles a pathogen. Sometimes dead pathogen, weakened pathogen are being introduced into the vaccine so that it simulates a fake infection in your body. This will help to trigger the white blood cell to quickly produce antibodies. If you link back to chapter 6, between lymphocytes and phagocytes, which produces antibodies? The answer is lymphocytes. So a vaccine is like a fire drill, preparing our body just like how we prepare ourselves for a fire. The white blood cells will produce antibodies when the dead or weakened pathogen is introduced in our body. And this will produce antibodies that will kill pathogen. Vaccine can help to prevent us from getting both bacteria and viral infection. Take note, vaccination is to help to prevent, but it does not cure. So it is not a treatment. When we are under an infection. Some diseases, like COVID-19, requires a second dose or even a third dose of the vaccine known as the booster. Why? Pause and think. One reason could be decreasing number of antibodies that was produced in the first round of vaccine. Another reason could be the evolving of the virus. When virus changes its shape and size and even genetic material, we need a new vaccine to be able to stimulate our white blood cells to produce antibodies that can recognize the new strains. So, why do we need a booster? Due to the changing strain of bacteria and virus. I hope you are taking down notes as you are listening to the video. Some vaccine can be taken orally, but mostly administered through injection. Since the moment we are born, Singapore makes it compulsory for us to receive a wide range and number of vaccine. And this is the table that you can see what are the different vaccine that you and I have received the moment we are born till today. This helps to protect us from very fatal diseases such as tetanus, polio, measles, mumps, that can be quite deadly and fatal if we were to be infected. You can see the number of dosage of some vaccine. For example, hepatitis B requires 3 different dosage. But some, such as polio, requires 5 over a period of 10 years. We do not have to retake most of the vaccine, as our body has already trained and have memory to fight against some of the diseases. But there are some that is encouraged to be taken on an annual basis. For example, the influenza jab, the flu jab for short. It is recommended for all to take it at least once a year. So what are some compulsory vaccination, apart from those that I have mentioned, are definitely the COVID-19 vaccination that all of us took when it hit 4 years ago. You can see how we are so strict with vaccination. Those who are vaccinated are able to venture into public spaces, attend schools, or even go to the hospital to visit. If you do not have a valid reason and you did not take the vaccine 3 years ago, you are not allowed to do many activities, such as going to school, going to public places, because vaccine helps to protect yourself and the people around you. I briefly mentioned the HPV jab in class. HPV is a virus that is transmitted due to sexual activity. So in short, when one is infected by HPV, it is known as a STI, sexually transmitted infection. There is a total of 3 different vaccines to protect us against HPV. And in Singapore, ever since 1 or 2 years ago, we have made the first vaccine free for all secondary 1 girls. So if you have younger siblings, female siblings, do ask them if they have received this jab from their school in the first year. The second and third jab have to be taken outside of school at a subsidized rate. These 3 jabs must be done across a period of 1.5 years. If I recall correctly, I've taken this on my own as well. There is a 6-month intervals between the jabs. So it is recommended to receive the jab before 26 years old, or before becoming sexually active. Then you may ask me, ma'am, how about us boys? Yes, HPV is not just a women disease. Men should also be vaccinated too. But scientifically speaking, females are more prone to getting HPV as compared to men. As such, this has always been promoted to female, but you boys can also ask for HPV jab in the clinic if you deem necessary. So let's take a look at the video to see how a vaccination works. I want you to pay attention to the interaction between the pathogen inside the vaccine and how it interacts with the white blood cells, more specifically the lymphocytes.
To understand how vaccines work, it helps to look first at how the immune system works, because vaccines harness the natural activity of your immune system. There are about 100 trillion bacteria and viruses on your body. Not all of them cause disease, but some are able to get inside our bodies to multiply, and this can make us ill. There are barriers to stop this happening, but suppose some disease-causing bacteria do get through. Your immune system is quick to recognise them as invaders. This is because the proteins or sugars on the bacteria's surface have different shapes to any of the ones in a human body. They trigger a complex chain of events involving many different types of white blood cells working together. One type of white blood cell is able to make antibodies to fight the invaders. Antibodies can stick to the proteins or sugars on the bacteria's surface, and this kills the bacteria or disables them. However, not all antibodies will work against these bacteria. They have to be exactly the right shape, a bit like a key fitting a lock. Our bodies have a library of billions of white blood cells, each of which can make just one shape of antibody. Only a few of these antibodies will match the invading bacteria. Producing antibodies of the right shape can take several days. By this time, there could be billions of disease-causing bacteria in your body. Once the right cells are activated, they quickly divide and turn into a production line, making masses of antibodies that stick to the bacteria. Eventually, your body gets rid of all the bacteria and you recover. Antibodies remain in the blood, and some white blood cells may also become memory cells. If those specific bacteria invade the body again, the immune system will respond so quickly that you won't get ill. Vaccines work in the same way. They contain weakened or dead bacteria or viruses, or even just a few proteins or sugars from the surface. This is enough to convince the immune system that a real invader has got in. The same process takes place as when real bacteria or viruses invade our bodies, except you don't get ill. Afterwards, if your body ever meets the real thing, your immune system will remember it and get rid of it before you even know it's there. To understand...
So let's take a look step by step how the vaccine works in our body. So there are two components that are involved. Number one, the white blood cells on the left. To be more specific, the lymphocytes, as well as the weakened or dead pathogen that resembles the actual one. So like what I mentioned previously, the protein on the surface, known as the surface protein, is known as the antigen. Recall and remember these words. So let's take a look at it step by step. So step number one, when you receive the vaccination, your white blood cell in your body will recognize the agent that resembles the pathogen. So your white blood cells has sensors, just like sensors, that will bind to the antigen. And when it binds to the antigen, it will trigger a series of reactions. So, upon successful binding, your white blood cells will be triggered to divide and make many copies of itself. Then, your white blood cells will produce many antibodies. Take note of the difference. Antibodies, represented by the letter Y. So the antibody produced will then recognize the antigen on the pathogen, bind and destroy the pathogen. So this is how the vaccine works. If there is no pathogen in your body, alright, what happens then to the remaining white blood cells and the antibodies? But before we get there, I'll pause and explain to you why, after receiving a vaccine, sometimes we do have some of the signs and symptoms of an infection. You recall, after taking your COVID-19 vaccine, myself, I have a very high fever, feverish for a few days, body ache for just a few days. Why? It's because my body is reacting to the dead and weakened pathogen that triggered a small viral infection. So this is why you feel some symptoms for a few days before you recover completely. So the antibodies that are being produced recognize and destroy any pathogens before they can be spread to other body cells. Well, but some white blood cells and antibodies remain behind. Those that help to fight the infection cannot be reused. But your white blood cells have already been trained to produce many antibodies when a similar viral or bacterial infection happens in your body, because these white blood cells has become memory cells. It remembers how the pathogen looks like, and when it meets a similar pathogen again, it can quickly divide and produce many antibodies to attack the pathogen inside your body. So just like what was understood in the video and the table that I showed you, why do we receive so many vaccines since we were born? Why can't there just be one vaccine that protects us from all bacteria and all virus? This is the reason why. Every white blood cell can only recognize one antigen on pathogen. And this white blood cell will only produce antibodies that can recognize one pathogen as well. So the antibody produced can only recognize and destroy one pathogen. This is the reason why our body has to receive so many different vaccines to train all our white blood cells to recognize different kinds of pathogens. So the one that you see in the picture, pathogen A, has antigen A on its surface. Pathogen B has antigen B on its surface. So it can only be recognized by the correct antibody to be killed by it. So why must some vaccine be taken regularly, just like influenza, right? Why can't we just take once and then that's it? Our body has the memory to protect us from future influenza attack. Like what I mentioned, this is because of genetic mutation. When the genetic material in the virus or bacteria changes, it also caused a change in antigen. You can see the surface protein looks different. So when the surface protein look different, the lymphocytes, the white blood cells, must recognize again. And they must recognize in order to produce new antibodies to destroy the new virus. So this is why some vaccination must be taken regularly, because of how fast the genes can mutate inside these virus and bacteria. So that's it for vaccination. I'll pause and end the video here and continue with the second video on antibiotics as well as antibiotic resistance.